that I'm proud to say I'm a native Round Laker. So I thank you for your loyalty and for your taking the time tonight in what I'm sure is a busy schedule, and hope you have a good meeting.
Thank you.
Thank
Dave.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Night. Be safe.
Right.
Good night. And comments from the public. And while we're waiting to see if there's any public comments, would anyone object to moving Mr. Thaler's presentation to the front so that we don't encumber his time? So
Not at all.
sausage being made.
That's fine.
So let's see, no public comment. Okay, Mark, do you want to take it away then?
Thank you, Mayor. I can't see the presentation at the moment.
Coming up. You should be able to see it now.
I can. So would you like me to just have you scroll through as I talk to them?
Yep, just tell me what to do.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. We had gone through and looked at everything relative to the building itself, and met with the mayor and Lydia and some others, talk about programming. And at the moment, we're just really waiting on two things. One, the report from Andover, Oregon, who has worked on your organ now for, I think, the better part of 50 years, and as well as just finalizing the cost estimate. But wanted to give everybody a heads up. And so, Mayor, if you could advance it. So first off, I will try to be very quick. I know that you have a lot of other things to address tonight. But in terms of the auditorium itself, I just wanted to remind everybody that, it really has undergone, quite a number of changes over time. Certainly started out basically an open air structure. In 1884 was that way. By 88, you can see where they added on for the organ, and you had the tower. By 95, they enclosed the bottom of the tower, and by 1915, all of the windows, were installed. And then later on in the 1970s, where it was enclosed at the bottom of the tower previously, that was actually taken away to see what you see today. Can you go to the next, please? So we developed a couple of plans of the building. This is the basically shows both the auditorium and the dressing rooms underneath the platform area of the stage. And next, this just shows where the organ is on top of those dressing rooms. Go to the next. Just shows the existing exterior elevations of the building. Go ahead. And so we looked at, all of the, again, looked at the entire building. Can move forward. The one thing though that before you do, we'll come back to potential changes in the building, but again, we had wanted to show how it sort of evolved over time, but also and sort of keep this view to the upper left, because one of the things that, we'll be talking about is the potential for expansion of the dressing rooms and providing some accessibility and some additional space. And this is where ultimately we thought that there could be an addition on this end. Go to the next one, please. So relative to all of the existing framing on the building, generally speaking, things are in pretty fair condition. We don't have a lot of issues there, but there are some. So the building at the south end, where they expanded it, is really it's a longer span for the same size roof members, and they're really a bit overstressed. So you can actually see when you buy the organ, when you look up the rafters, which are sort of going horizontal, actually have quite a bow in them, and the structure itself actually has come down and begun to rest on the case. Now, part of that was addressed a number of years ago when there was a column that was stuck in there, but it's still resting on the opposite side as well. So, the issue that the structure is in fact undersized really does impact both the organ and, the potential for adding anything additional. So, I think one of the things that, that really brings to bear is that anytime we do any additional support of either theatrical lighting, AV equipment, anything like that, we're really going to need to take a very close look at, potentially adding some structural support to address that. And that can, of course, be, a localized repair or strengthening. There are some members that actually do have cracks that ought to be sistered up, but generally speaking, things are in reasonably good condition. And even though they probably wouldn't prove out, when we talk to our structural engineers, they're like, well, I can't prove that this works, but clearly it has. It's been around for 120 years worth of winters. But again, we do know that there is definitely some overstressing at the southern end, especially. So next. At the base of the building, the area below the sloped floor, has, structure below the posts, but then in between, you really have these kind of skirts, these concrete skirts, which are there. They only go down to grade. They don't really go much below that. They're not actually taking any vertical load, but they are taking some load, basically acting as retaining walls to hold the dirt back that's underneath the floor slabs. And there are a number of areas where there is some cracking, which shows that there is some movement in some of these. So there are areas when we redo the floor slabs, we'll want to make sure that these areas are compacted correctly and any repairs are made at that time. Next. The roof itself, the asphalt shingles are definitely weathered. There are isolated areas where it's actually sort of raised up, that there's something strange going on down below. You can see that in the upper left photograph. For the most part, the asphalt shingle roof, ought to last you probably another 10 years or so before you're going to have to, definitely go beyond repair to replacement. But just wanted to sort of update on that. Next, please. The clapboard shingles trim, there's a fair number of areas that show rot around the base that really should be addressed. And, at the same time, the entire building really, it's time to be repainted. So what we don't say here in terms of colors, we ought to certainly check before you do repaint the building totally. Do a paint analysis and make sure that the colors are in fact historically accurate for what was there previously. Go ahead. The windows clearly are not really operational in any good way. I mean, you can't use the you see on the right, that mechanism basically opened all the clear story windows. We can open individual windows down below. There are some areas of rot in both the frames and the sash as well. Some of the sash had been reglazed, but then not painted, so some of that's failing. Basically, the windows should be restored. Some of the stained glass windows, there are some that are broken. There are other panes that aren't really good replacement panes for what was there historically. Next. The doors, have all seen pretty heavy wear. There's some warpage in some of the doors. They don't all close properly. Again, all of those things should be addressed, in sort of a wholesale exterior restoration of the building. Next. The organ itself, so there's, it's an interesting thing. This is one of the oldest organs in the country. It is still operational. It's National Historic Landmark, incredibly important. What has actually helped to provide longevity to the organ is the fact that the building is not heated. It hasn't dried it out, and we have to be very careful about introducing anything that is going to cause damage to the organ. But the organ needs plenty of work. In speaking with Matthew Bellacchio today from Andover, he was really saying, from a functional standpoint, from the sound, really the uppermost wind chest and pipes really require restoration. So the ones that you see in the upper right there, those are the ones that are sort of his first priority in terms of redoing that area and getting that restored. And then the lower wind chests and pedal chests also require restoration. But he's rightly reluctant to do anything on some of this until the structural issues are addressed. So, for instance, when in the lower right image, you can see there, there's a couple of boards just above where the stained glass is sort of shining through. Some of those panels are actually pushed out, and some of them are bowing because on the, let's see, that's the east side, there's actually weight from the roof truss that's bearing on the case itself. And the front of the case also is starting to bow out, and that also needs to be pulled back. But it really is something that relates back to the structure on the southern end of the building, and it really should be have some additional support there. So, next one, please. In terms of the actual performance space, the seating area, obviously we know that the floor slabs are currently being looked at. We're going to grout underneath to provide support, and then grind them down so that they're smooth. There's also going to be some repair to the one column that's sort of actually two columns on the western side at the north end, during this immediate project that's upcoming, and then the seats will be reinstalled. The other issue, though, is that the stage also, is not accessible at the moment. There is a ramp, but it doesn't meet ADA standards. So, one of the things, is certainly to address those issues in the not too distant future. Next, please. The concession and restroom areas, similarly, they're outdated. We have to upgrade them for ADA as well. One of the issues that Lydia and her group, were concerned about was the fact that it's really right up front, and from a programmatic standpoint, they would really like to have some of that in back so that, you're not really interrupting performances to have those kind of things right up next to the stage. So since those areas are actually something that should be upgraded anyway, we've actually, as part of the future work, we're actually suggesting that those things actually move to the back of the auditorium. Next. And the dressing rooms, the dressing rooms are not accessible. You can't always get, the acts that you would like. Then they're, again, pretty outdated, pretty, dismal, the dressing rooms down below. So ultimately those, we would also call for those to be renovated. Next, please. The building has no current heating or cooling system, no mechanical ventilation. And that seems to be what everybody would just as soon keep. Allow it to remain something that is more of a three-season sort of venue. And so, there's no, real good reason to introduce those sorts of things. It becomes obviously very costly and very difficult, to heat a space like this anyway. We certainly could do some sort of radiant heat in the floor, but again, speaking with Andover, they would certainly rather that it not be to start with relative to the organ. So we're not recommending that there really be any addition there. Certainly from the standpoint of ventilation, we want these windows to be operable so that we have that capacity, to basically cool the space in the summertime. We should definitely upgrade electrical wiring in the building, and there does need to be lighting upgrades as well. Go ahead, please. Next. So the list of sort of prioritized projects that we came up with, repair and replacement of the concrete flooring, placement of the seating, structural stabilization, relocation of the restrooms and concession accessibility upgrades, technical upgrades relative to lighting, sound systems and such, dressing room upgrades, exterior restoration work, and then finally an addition and of course ongoing maintenance for the building. Next. So the first project, basically we're talking about replacing the repair and replacement of concrete slabs sort of in the center section of the auditorium. Next. And the seats you already have, those will be installed next. Then, oops, go back one. Structural stabilization would include, work on the bell tower, dealing with some of that. I think one of the things that I would actually recommend is sort of going back with the enclosure of the bell tower at the base, for two reasons. One, it basically provides a vestibule there, but it also provides some rigidity to the tower, and it works basically with what we've designed for future addition. So you'd basically be addressing all of those things at once. Next. So the relocation of the restrooms and concession accessibility upgrades, basically includes some of those earlier projects and stage accessibility, and you can see that in this next slide. So it would basically address sort of the perimeter of the auditorium as well as the area that of the current restrooms. Next. The seating along the edges would be installed, and what we were trying to do is basically, in terms of programming, it was very desirable to have the areas on both sides to basically be flat platforms that could serve a variety of purposes. So we could have tables for some sort of a dinner theater. If you have some sort of a reception, it gives you that opportunity. And it also basically provides some way to have, accessible seating, to have an aisle across the middle for accessibility that way. So you'd have good accessibility through the space, and it gives you some flexibility on how you can utilize on the windows. And then the next slide, please, Gary. In the back, you can see, you'd have concessions, storage, the toilet rooms. So the toilet rooms, can be enlarged. You can have better toilets. They'd be accessible, of course. It gives you an option to, you see a stair that goes there, and it actually provides a way for, the area above that to be used as basically like a balcony. So you can have, spotlights up there. You can have soundboards as well. You'd have typically, Dan would want to have his soundboard down in the middle of the seating. That's where there's a space there that has some missing seats. The soundboard could be there, but other times, we can also have it up in the back. This also provides us a place for a ticket booth down in the lower right, along with some storage. And then to get actual accessibility for the stage, it provides a lift to get you up to stage level. Next, please. So you can see here, by basically creating that area in the back, and this would all be kept below the windows that are on the north side, so it wouldn't impede that at all. But it allows you to have this upper balcony area that, technical issues, and can also have some additional storage up there as well for Dan. Next. And, in the report, Dan had a number of things in terms of lighting and sound that he's called out. So that would be project number 5. And next. And the dressing room upgrades, basically new lighting, plumbing fixtures, just refinishing those areas. Next. And then dealing with the exterior, restoration of the windows, sort of the first piece of that. That could also be done without doing all the other parts and pieces, just from a phase standpoint, if you'd like. Next. And, the clapboards and all the other wood repair could be separate. We're pricing it out so that it would all be shown as, part of the same project. But obviously it depends on what your funding would allow. Next. And then lastly, basically an addition, which would provide some additional dressing rooms and practice space, as well as gathering space. And it would really, down on the lower right, you can see basically it would expand by about a bay that area that is sort of the base of the tower. It would sort of wrap all the way around. So the lowest area would extend out by one bay. And you can see that in the next slide in terms of plan. So this provides, a good sized gathering space. So again, if you're doing weddings or something like that, now you have a space that, you can also have, gathering area. You can have, a little reception back there. It also provides, that additional dressing room space as well. And so it also, makes all of those dressing rooms accessible at that point, because otherwise, when you go through the basement currently, you have to go up and down stairs to get there. This would actually make all those spaces accessible and tied in with the auditorium itself. Next. So funding opportunities, relative to normal times, and these are not normal times, but normally in the New York State CFA, we have seen a lot of grants for performing arts, and especially historic properties. We worked on Universal Preservation Hall up in Saratoga, that received both Environmental Protection Fund grants, EPF grants they're called, from the New York State Office of Parks, Rec, and Historic Preservation. Those are for specific to dealing with historic properties. So any of the restoration type work would be able to be paid for that way. Those grants go up to $600,000. You can do multiple grants. We just did one out in, actually it was a church out in Utica. They just got their second EPF grant in the last round. So they've gotten nearly $1 million worth of help there. The Empire State Development grants, again, UPH got one. We're working with Clinkhart Hall out in Sharon Springs. They also got both EPF and CFA, or Empire State Development grants. The New York State Council of the Arts also has grant funding available through the CFA. All grants available through the Preservation League of New York State. The next round for those are specific for different studies, and in March there'll be another round for those. Federal grants, currently the Save America's Treasures grants, because you're a National Historic Landmark, you'd be eligible, but they haven't funded those for a couple of years now. So, we'll have to see when the next round of those come out. Foundation grants, we certainly did get quite a few for Universal Preservation Hall and some of the other not-for-profit arts foundations that I've been working with. And one thing that I put on here just to simply make you aware of it, if the auditorium was run by a not-for-profit, or it was dealt, if you were going to do a major restoration on the building. There could also be a situation where you set up a for-profit entity that basically has ownership for a limited time on it. And this was actually done again at Universal Preservation Hall. And they were able to take advantage of the tax credits, which account for 40% of the amount of the work you're doing on the building. So there's a lot of incentive to do that. Clearly, you're a municipality. There's a lot of issues that would have to be addressed in here. But I just put it out there because it is a major potential funding opportunity. But there are a lot of different things that would have to sort of fall into place. We'd be happy to talk more at a different time on that. Next, please. I think that's it for the moment. I know that, again, trying to be brief as I can be. So any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Yeah, Tom Bergen. Just a couple of questions. This is a lot of work, and I know you're not. It would be very impractical for us to be able to do it financially. But could you put a, and I know it would also be done in stages, but could you put a ballpark figure on a restoration of this sort?
Okay, I will say no at the moment. I will say what you will have with the report within a month will actually be very specific. So you'll actually have all the numbers for each one of these pieces of the project. To be honest, I always tell clients, you don't want architects coming up with budget numbers, because we are always way too optimistic, and you don't need to hear optimistic numbers. You want to hear truthful numbers that when you go to bid, that's what they'll be. So we actually have an independent construction cost estimator that we use, and he's actually figuring those numbers out right now. And Andover, because that's such a specialty thing, is actually figuring out the pricing for the work on the organ itself.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Gary and/or Kim, I don't know whether I got this or not. I only have a draft copy of what we just saw. I don't have what we were looking at on the screen. Is that something you can send to us? In other words, okay, thanks.
Yeah, that was the truncated version for the presentation.
All right.
Yeah,
I didn't get a copy of that, so I don't know whether they went out or not to us, but.
no, not yet. It
Oh,
came
okay.
today, so.
Gotcha. All right, good.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If we had an extraordinary snow load, is that building in danger of collapsing?
I don't think you're in danger of collapsing, but it is, again, I mean, the building has gone through snows now for 140 years, and there hasn't been really degradation of the structure, but it is under designed, hence the reason why you actually do see some of those sags, and that is why some of that has come down onto the organ case. So there is repairs that should be made, but in terms of wholesale redoing of the structure of the building, no. That's, yes, there may be some specific areas that should be beefed up, but not everywhere. And no, I don't believe you're in any immediate danger of any sort of collapse or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Now, again, as I had mentioned, to have a structural engineer look at it and prove it, they're not going to be able to prove it, that, it wouldn't fall down. The reality is that the wood that was used was old growth lumber. It's a lot stronger than what you buy today. And the fact is that, the proof is that it's withstood, 140 years of snow loads in much worse snows than we get today.
I have a question, Mark.
Yep.
I know this is really in the pipe dream phase at this point, but if we ever did do that addition that you're proposing on the front, is there any chance that could be heated separately from the main structure and used, all year round? I don't
Oh,
really,
absolutely. Yeah. That would be an easy thing.
I don't really have anything in mind. It just seems like the more versatile we could make it, the better. And I have one other question. I had concerns about some of the trees around the building that looked like they were having root structures that might be implicating the foundation. Did you look at any of that kind of like, I call it extraneous evidence?
In terms of the overall site, you mean?
Well, I do know on the east side near the door, there's a tree that's really just growing up almost on the wall, on the foundation
Pretty
itself.
close.
Yeah, and there's a couple others like that branches provide a runway straight into the soffits for the squirrels. I just didn't see that anywhere in your report.
We can certainly address that in the final report. I don't disagree. It's it's always sort of a touchy subject in terms of trees.
Oh, we know.
And it's been obviously a treed site for most of its life. You see those, 19th century photographs with, some good sized trees around there. But you're not wrong in that, some of these trees, potentially, they tend to shade the building too much, keep moisture there, so you end up with more rot because of them and so on.
No one loves trees more than I do. I live in a forest practically, but it seems to me that the trees that are there now are just kind of haphazard, and maybe a thoughtful plan could be more beneficial for the building and for the site. But that's not really in your scope. But if I am concerned about the trees that actually present a hazard near term or long term.
Yeah, we can definitely mention it within the report. I'd be happy to add that.
That's all I have for now.
Gary, am I allowed to ask a question?
Sure.
Thank you. So the paint looked like it was one of the last things. Is there any issue with the fact that some of the areas have been on the tower subject to weather with no paint last year and probably will be again this year? Is there any concern that it'll deteriorate the condition of the bell tower to the point where we might have to do additional repairs on it? Would there be any sense in maybe painting it now just to protect it through the winter?
No, not right now. I think for the sake of, a season, it doesn't really make sense to try to do that, incur that cost and then do structural repairs. I think that the structural repairs for the tower, should come, within the next couple of years here anyway, at least. And then at that point, it should all be painted so that, you don't have continuing deterioration, for rot. But I wouldn't, try to go ahead and paint it ahead of time, to try to lessen the amount of work that you're going to have to do, because it's not really going to lessen the work.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That it, folks? Well, thank you very much, Mark. That was very, very impressive.
Thank you.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So, all right, I'll let you go.
Thank you. Moving on to superintendent's report. John is out today. The valve project has been finished and the spot paving on those areas where the valves were replaced is finished. Lake Burlington and Second, and maybe a couple others, I don't recall, are scheduled to be paved starting pretty soon. Animal control officer. Bob was tracking down a rabid possum. And was near Baker Park and was in the middle of the road walking towards kids. So he's been looking for it, but it hasn't been seen in a few days. And he said that after a few days, if it is rabid, it would be dead.
Yeah, it would be dead.
Chief. Thought I saw you there. Yep.
Who's there? As you've heard with the siren, we continue to be busy. We had 43 calls last month. Other than that, we're not really doing anything on the outside, nothing with the schools this year, nothing with daycares. We have one Halloween parade instead of normally doing 3 or 4 of those, nothing in the village for Halloween. So other than that, we're still hanging in there and still moving along fine. We talked today about the boat, and we'll work on having Jess do that with the paper and that type of stuff, and get that replaced over the winter before next spring comes. That's all. Unless anybody has any questions.
No. Peter.
I continue to work with both Victoria Landing and Griffin's Ridge on site issues. We have issues on both sites that I'm trying to work out with the residents on the one, and we need some additional surveys for Griffin's Ridge on the placement of roads. We also have some issues in the village, and I talked to our village attorney about maybe we need to do a workshop on people encroaching onto village property, or looking at 8th Street. There's a number of places where this is going on in the village, and I think we need to be consistent on what we do. Other than that, no, everything is moving along quietly.
Okay, Veterans Committee, there is a plan for Veterans Day celebration. It will be similar to the Memorial Day celebration, so a smaller scale outside. And more information on that will be coming shortly. Treasurer.
Okay. As usual, I emailed to board members the current trial balance, and this time I included an update on all of the village's reserves. So you guys should have received that. There are four resolutions that we're going to need this meeting. The first one, payment is due to Kubricki Construction for work on the water project valve replacement and asphalt repair. Payment is due from the water project, or the HWT fund, in the amount of $65,032.42. The capital project fund, the water project fund, doesn't currently have this money available. So after talking with Jane, the CPA, and Gary, resolution is requested to temporarily use unrestricted fund balance from the general fund to pay Kubricki for their work until reimbursed by the EFC State Revolving Fund. Reimbursement for that literally takes about 3 weeks, so chances are it would be reimbursed before the next meeting. The unrestricted fund balance right now is just about 43 or 430,000. So we would be okay to borrow from it for a few weeks if you guys agree. So budget entries to transfer the unrestricted fund balance from the general fund to the water project fund is right below.
So moved. Do you want to do that now?
Yeah.
I'll second.
I'll move that one. That's the Kubricki construction work.
And I'll second it.
Discussion?
Jesse, the reimbursement is in full?
Yes, it'll be fully reimbursed. Yep.
And you said about 3 weeks or so?
About 3 weeks or so.
Okay.
Correct.
Shall we vote? Yep, Tom,
Yes.
Heidi? Paul
Yes.
and Matt and
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
Okay. So the next resolution, the national, what is it? The National Trust for Historic Preservation Grant that was in the amount of $3,000 that Lydia had received at the end of last year. It was deposited into the general bank
Actually,
account.
Jessica, that was the $3,000 was
Yes.
from the Malta Global
That
Foundries.
was global.
Yeah,
Was it global?
yeah,
Okay.
Malta, Town of Malta Global Foundries grant. Sorry,
Okay.
didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. So we're going to change that. The Town of Malta grant for $3,000 that Lydia had received was deposited into the general bank account at the beginning of the year. So resolution is requested to appropriate that $3,000 to pay for the new outdoor seating at the auditorium.
I'll make that resolution.
Second.
We all will.
Discussion?
Who seconded?
I believe I was second, but Heidi was
Okay.
right behind me, so you can choose. Dealer's choice.
Are we all aye on that?
And we're voting
Yes.
the
Okay.
foundation, right?
Malta.
Malta Global.
Malta Global.
Okay.
And
So-
Lydia, should I send a thank you to them now, or did we do that last year? Do you remember? I'll double check. I
can't
keep a
hurt
copy.
to thank them twice.
Oh, you know what? We'll take pictures of it and maybe we'll
Yeah.
send some pictures.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Okay, good.
Perfect. Okay, third resolution. The tax warrant on the current budget, the Village of Round Lake 2021 budget was understated by $356.58 due to a rounding error. So to balance the budget, resolution is requested to reduce the appropriation line item A7550.4 or celebrations contractual by $356.58. And then the budget entries below. I don't know if maybe Kim wants to explain it a little more or
Apparently
Gary?
they round, or they use decimal, when they multiply, they use 6 decimal points, and I didn't. So
Yeah.
in the
So
future,
next time we have to do that with 6 decimal places. Yeah.
So to correct that, resolution is requested to reduce celebrations contractual.
So moved. Oh, I'll second.
discussion?
And in addition, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, guys. I have Jonah in the room. I didn't hear who moved that.
Heidi.
Heidi, thanks, Heidi. And Matt, I heard you seconded.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Okay, so in addition to increasing that appropriation to balance, is it not my turn?
I
have to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're not
Shoot.
done with this one, right?
Let's vote on this one. Yeah.
You're not done with this one?
I have to vote.
Yes? Was there more to this one? Number
Yeah,
10?
just the cover page on the budget. Resolution to
Resolution is
update
also
the cover
requested
page.
to update the budget's cover sheet to reflect the tax warrant issued as 403-892.22.
Correct.
Who moved that?
I moved it. I guess that's a separate resolution, right?
No, that's the end of the number, that
Oh,
one.
okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Heidi moved it and
I
Matt
see.
seconded.
Okay,
Yeah.
discussion?
We'll
Vote?
vote. Tom,
Yes.
Heidi,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
and Gary.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and last resolution needed. Expense account A7110.4 or Parks Contractual lacks the needed funds to cover pending and anticipated claims. Expense account A7110.2 or Parks Equipment currently has $3,493 available. Resolution is requested to transfer $1,000 from Parks Equipment to Parks Contractual, and then there's the budget entry.
Motion?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
discussion. Paul?
Tom,
Yes.
Heidi,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
thanks, Matt,
Yes.
and Gary.
Yes.
And just the abstract.
All righty, Williston Library. And no report, auditorium, AP3.
I just have a couple of things. Hold on a sec. As you heard, we're going to pay Colin for the benches. They should be delivered tomorrow. I saw the design before they were quite finished, but they look pretty cool to me. And if anyone has a strong opinion about exactly how they should be positioned, then come over to the auditorium tomorrow. I can tell Colin what to do.
Lydia? Lydia,
So, yes.
how will they be affixed to the ground? Will you need the crew to do anything?
You know, I have to talk to Colin about that because I'm not sure he can even handle them himself. I think they're probably pretty heavy. And so I don't know if they need to be affixed. I mean, they're all metal. So, but we can, I haven't actually seen them. I don't know how heavy they are. And if it's a question of affixing them, we might need to consult with the crew and figure out exactly how to do that. Or maybe we decide we don't need to. I can't, they look enormous. So it'd be hard to imagine anyone trying to make off with them.
we had a giant wood stove sitting outside our art studio, and it was taken away, and it was hundreds and hundreds of pounds
Okay.
for scrap metal. Someone stole it.
Point
So
taken.
I think even if it's just stakes or something like that, it should be something.
Yeah, I mean, we can always have Colin put them in the auditorium for now and come up with a solution to that. I think
They could also be maybe attached to the tower under the ground. You know, you dig a trench, you cable it, and then you
I don't
cover it
know,
with
we're
dirt.
gonna need a master plan for that.
Yeah, right. I don't charge too much for that. What time tomorrow? Do you know? Are they coming?
I don't know yet. I think he said tomorrow afternoon, but I'll send around a message if you're interested.
Good, thanks.
So the contract is just for the chairs? It's not to have them placed?
Say that again?
Is the contract just for the chairs and does not include them being placed?
They're not repaired, they're fabricated. So, no, I don't believe we asked him to actually install them. We're getting 2 handmade pieces of art for $3,000. I think we got a pretty good deal.
Well, the village crew has installed a lot of benches and they pour a little pad and screw the chairs down, so.
Well, I'm sure Colin will have some ideas of how best to do that as well if we think it's necessary. As I said, we can put them in the auditorium for the short term if necessary. We have a little update on programming. Tom Dressler recorded a concert in the auditorium at the end of September. It was his 29th year in a row playing here. The concert is in the middle of being edited and will be available on the auditorium YouTube channel in the near future. Of course, Dan Pesca was a huge help with that, and so is David Straight and Lamar Smart, who is a resident of Victorian Landings, who's really jumped into some of these projects. He's got a lot of good skills, so keep him on your radar. An update on the floor project. I can't remember if we received the plans from the engineer at the last meeting, but we had received them since then, and we're soliciting the bids for the actual construction work. We had an original contractor for this project, but the amount of his bid is about $16,000. So my understanding is we need to get 2 more bids. We've contacted 2 more contractors and we'll see what they provide. That is solely for stabilizing the posts that we identified as troubling. So ideally, the board would pass a resolution allocating $16,000 for that job so that we can proceed with it until, not worry about the next meeting and see what the other bids look like. And of course, keep you informed, and Gary will sign whatever proposal comes out of this. This is only for the post work. There's separate prices from the original contractor for grinding the floor down and for applying a finish. And the prices for these are horrifying, but we're not going there right now. So this is just for stabilizing the post. So I would request that motion if you are so inclined.
I'll make a motion.
From what fund?
I'll second.
From what fund? That has to be part of the motion.
Is a repair a capital improvement?
Definitely. Well, it might be more in the line of maintenance, so.
I don't know. Mr. Peterson?
You're not supposed to do maintenance out of
Right.
parkland funds. So let's say you, wise one.
Well, it could be considered part of a capital improvement project, though. I don't know. I defer to Tom on that question.
Yeah, what do you think?
Because it's a three-step project to improve the seating and the floors.
Tom, are you receiving us?
I am, and I think we can squeak through on that one.
Okay.
Parkland funds or something else?
Yes.
That's
Okay.
part of my motion, yeah.
We have more discussion before we vote?
Did anybody second it?
Paul,
All did. It was 16,000.
Yeah,
to
well,
spend
it's
up
actually
to
$16,026, but I'll spot you the 26 if it comes to that.
Up to
I'll hold you to it.
Discussion? Paul?
Tom,
Yeah.
Heidi,
Yes.
Paul, Matt,
Yes.
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And one last thing, AP3 is the deadline for the Global Foundries grants for this year is November 6th. And we really can't think of any sort of improvement projects over there until we got the master plan. So we have two possible programming ideas, and who knows if there'll be any programming next year, but we're gonna apply for funds for that anyway. One would be Malta, Musicians of Malta concert series, probably starting with just 2 or 3. And a second would be a program involving children and Quintocracy, the woodwind group that was practicing over in the auditorium and did a couple of streaming performances over there. They apparently were involved in a project that there's a book written by, oh gosh, it's a local news guy who wrote a book, and they commissioned a composer to set it to music, and Quintocracy performed the music before audiences of children. It's really popular. So those are the 2 grants we're going for. We didn't get anything last year. I'm not sure they know what to make of us yet because we're new. So if the village has a project they want me to apply, I'm happy to do that. But I am having trouble coming up with ideas right now.
I think something that might resonate with them is a contribution toward a lift so the people in wheelchairs and with other mobility problems can get up to the level of the stage.
Well, I think eventually that would be a really good project, but it's all in the context of this master plan. We can't go installing things or fixing things until we have an overall program for it.
But we can go about gathering money for it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no harm in asking, for sure. So I'd be happy to put together an application for that if you think that's something the village is interested in.
That was
But
part of
can-
the problem we had before when we were with the state grant is every time we went to how about we do this, but the other things that had to be done around it, you know, it became very difficult to isolate projects. And that
The other,
I think led us to this master plan.
Yeah, it's a real
Also for-
chicken and egg situation.
also for this grant, doesn't it have to be like used this year or something? Can you take the grant and just sit on it for a couple of years or not?
I think that's a good point, Paul. I think that does require it be spent in a year's time.
I thought it did. You might want to just check that out because
No,
I
I
was
think
involved
you're right, because I remember thinking, oh, good, we're finally getting our benches. We squeaked in before the year went up in December. So that would argue against a fund. Well, put your minds to it, and if anyone comes up with an idea, I'd be happy to complete the application process. It doesn't have to be auditorium related. It could be anything. These grants are typically, the highest ones are $5,000. There are many, many more that are in the $300, $500 range. So
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Now, under old business, we have Megan Dudley, new porch. My understanding is we are going to table that. And Peter there, yeah. Table that and possibly discuss that at a workshop meeting. Tom, does that ring a bell?
Well, she's not on the call, and you and I went over all the information we have with Peter earlier today, and we don't have enough factual information to be able to make any forward progress anyway. So it strikes me as a good idea.
Peter?
Yeah, I agree.
Question on this, because I forget people's names all the time. Is this the porch we talked about over on next to the park?
Yeah.
Where they were thinking, we talked about it already with them, and one suggestion they were going to look at was redesigning it so that it didn't come forward any farther than the current concrete. So we haven't heard anything back from them on a redesign, have we?
I don't think that's the issue right now. I think the issue is it's on in Village Parkland. Can they build in Village Parkland?
Okay.
I thought we were looking up to find out if there had been a pre-existing porch prior to the Parkland deed.
I think we can go back as far as 1968, but it has to go back as far as 1958. I think we need to go at least 10 years before the village was incorporated. So we can't prove anything prior to 1968.
Wasn't Scott Rigney looking for photos or something?
We found an old photo, but the porch that was on it might have been, probably was in its own property, within the property. You know, maybe it had a 4-foot porch. They're looking for, you know, this thing is 8 feet coming off there. That was poured at a much later date.
Okay.
So the original porch is much narrower than it is today? Is that what you believe?
I have pictures that from the previous owner that he thinks this was the house. Yeah, it looks like it could have been maybe 4 feet, which is typical for a porch in that area would be 4 to 5 feet. This piece of concrete comes out almost 8 feet. There was never a porch 8 feet on that building. You know, we just don't know when that concrete was poured.
But what percent? Okay, so so was the old porch completely within so you're saying that the current thing is maybe 4 feet past the property line?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're waiting for the applicants to get back to us with further information. Until we do, we can't do anything.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so we're tabling that. Next is the chicken law resolution. Tonight, we will be voting on, not on the local law amendment to the local law 112 farming, but voting on the zoning changes needed prior to amending that. And Tom, if I'm misquoting you, let me know.
Nope, that's correct. There are two local laws that need to be amended. One is our zoning code, the other is the right to farm law. And we've had a public hearing on the zoning code. We can move forward on that tonight if the board wishes. And I would request that someone make someone move a resolution to set a public hearing on the right to farm law, if indeed the zoning law change passes.
Okay. So Kim, do you have the resolution there? Did you want to read it, or do you want me to read it?
Sorry, if you could read it, that'd be great.
I don't have the most recent one, though.
Just take off the first sentence, as per Tom.
Whereas the Board of Trustees in the Village of Round Lake wishes to permit the raising of hens in less than 2 acres in the village RV1 zone and under limited circumstances in the village's RV2 zone. And whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Round Lake designated itself lead agency for this legislative change and received no objection to that designation within the time provided by law. And whereas the proposed local law was submitted to and approved by the Saratoga County Planning Board, and whereas a public hearing was held on the 19th day of August 2020, at which time all persons wishing to be heard were heard. Now, therefore, it is resolved that the proposed legislation is approved, and it is further resolved that the village clerk is directed to file the local law with the New York State Secretary of State. Does somebody move that?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
Can I weigh in first?
Sure.
Okay, and I have some notes, so I may have to refer to them. I'm going to be opposed to this. I believe that the current designation regarding agricultural purposes works fine and doesn't really need to be amended in any way. I'm going to set aside the issues which I consider a bit specious about egg shortages and sustainability. I'm also going to set aside the fact that the only guy who had set up a chicken coop in the village no longer has it. My opposition is specific to chicken raising in the RV2 zone, which is the core of the village. In our code, chapter 112 on farming states that farming is an essential activity in the village. But when you drill down into the district use regulations, you'll find that farming and related activities are only recommended for areas zoned RV1 and for LCV, which is land conservation. Specifically excluded from farming agricultural activities is the RV2, CV1, commercial, and municipal parks. These changes, these exclusions, I should say, date to nearly 25 years ago when municipalities were passing these laws, right to farm laws. And most municipalities in this area were doing that. People I've talked to, and I've talked to many who were present at the time, said that the RV2 zone here was excluded from agricultural activities, specifically because of density. And people here felt that the smell, the sanitation, the closeness to others made farm-related activities impractical and unsafe. for the RV2 zoning. So in that regard, I feel we shouldn't be violating the right to farm, the intentions of the right to farm law. In addition, the newly adopted comprehensive plan designates the RV2 zone core, again, the village core, as the most restrictive because of its density and historic nature. And a proposed law like this would upend that. Frankly, and finally, I don't understand how we can propose changes in zoning for such a, what I consider to be unnecessary reason as chicken farming. But this board is unable and unwilling to discuss changes in zoning in our vulnerable areas like RV1, where, excuse me, where high density and medium density housing or commercial development threatens the character and the future of the village. And lo and behold, within the last week, we get a plan submitted for 20-something two-family houses on 33 acres. And we have spun our wheels here for years and done absolutely nothing about either rezoning that. We haven't even gotten an appraisal that we asked for some time ago. And to me, it's beyond my comprehension that we could be passing rezoning for chickens and we can't do anything about the major issues, which are the larger parcels that we need to preserve. So on the RV2 issue, I'm not going to support it for those reasons. Thank you.
Couple things. You know very well, I mean, we're just rehashing the same arguments over and over and over again. But you know very well that in RV2, very, very few parcels are greater than 0.25. So that's not much of an issue, I don't think. As far as RV1, you were on the board when they started the zoning. So how can you say that the board has been when they started looking at revising the zoning? So how can you say that this current board is unwilling and unable to discuss rezoning? It hasn't come up. If you want to start a committee to look at it, that's fine. We've got the comprehensive plan done now. If you want to lead that committee, take the charge, that's great. I'd be happy to serve on it with you.
As I recall,
it's unfair to say that the board has been unwilling and unable to discuss changes to RV1.
As I recall, once or twice, I made a motion to change the zoning in the RV1, and I don't believe I even got a second.
It's not ringing a bell.
You know.
All right, that's a topic that's certainly worthy of a topic for a first Wednesday meeting, discussing further revisions to zoning. But it's a little off topic for this. As far as the appraisal, I thought I had made it clear that I wasn't going to spend the village money on getting an appraisal unless Vamoco had clear title to the property and they could proceed.
Well, you know, I don't know what your motives are, but all of a sudden we're faced with 50-something units of housing up there.
What do you mean?
And,
you don't know what my motives are. My motives are I didn't want to waste money.
Gary, I'm not going to get into an argument with you. I can cut and splice some thoughts about my own, what's wasteful and what's not. But we asked for an appraisal. We didn't get it. And now this is the second threat to that 33 acres up there. And while I don't know if the guy is ever going to have the money to be able to do what he wants to do, sooner or later, something's going to happen to that. We're going to lose those 33 acres.
I failed to see how an appraisal would stop that.
Well, an appraisal would give us some idea if we could afford to buy the property. That's one thing. Years ago, as you remember, we could have had that property for $125,000.
Right, when you were on the board.
Yes, I was on the board. And we had, I think, 3 public hearings. The people didn't want to do it. And I don't know. I think I'd feel differently today. I certainly would feel differently today if I could get the property for $125,000. But we don't even know what it's worth.
Well, substantially more than that, I can tell you that. Peter, did you want to weigh in on this?
The planning board's going to view it to say, we discussed it, that having site controls will not be an issue. We know that he can buy the property, Andy's property, at will. Andy, I talked to the homeowner, he will sell it for actually, I think, $250,000. So getting access to the property is not a problem for the developer. The issue that I think I have with this proposal is under the type of development that he's proposing, cluster development, it has to be single-family homes. He's proposing 2-family homes. So I don't think this current proposal will work. It doesn't meet our code. But we feel sooner or later he's going to come in with something. We feel like he doesn't have an issue getting site control. One of the members of the planning board recommended we buy Andy's land for $250,000 and just block the site. I have no clue about how that works.
All right, so we got a little off topic there. We're still on the chicken.
Yeah,
want to
to
count the
speak to
chickens
that,
before they hatch.
to speak to that slightly, I agree with both of you in a way. I do think that we should be probably looking at the zoning, but I don't see these 2 issues as mutually exclusive. We did have a lot of meetings, and we can do 2 things, and so we can multitask. And I'm also concerned about what goes on up there and all those other areas. But I think we've looked at this quite a bit, and my memory, we haven't passed the law yet, right? This is a zoning change.
Yes.
Do we still have to put into place something with all the setbacks and things? How does that work?
Yeah, that we had a committee. Tom was on it. A couple other people were on it. We developed that, and that we have. It's called Local Law 112, amending Local Law 112 that was sent out a while ago. It has all the conditions and setbacks and permit.
Right, but do we still have to vote on that? I forget the order.
That would be next month. After
Right,
a
we still
public
have to
hearing
vote on it though. I want to make sure. My memory is that my own concerns about not being able to have a coop too close to neighbors' property were pretty much addressed in those issues. And that left it to a narrow number of places because you'd have to have enough of a setback. So for those reasons, I think it's fine. I don't think this idea of allowing some chickens to me is not a major farming. Nobody's going to the farming business, so to speak, or an agricultural business in this situation. So I don't really have an issue with it, provided we go forward next month with having the proper protections in place, for neighbors and such.
All right, any more discussion? Paul? Kim?
Tom, we're
No.
voting? Okay. Heidi, sorry.
Okay. Oh, Heidi, you're muted. What did you say? Heidi, you're muted.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Paul,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And next we have Paper Street.
Gary, maybe this is the time to look for a resolution to schedule a public hearing at the next meeting on the right to farm law, which has that additional has those additional provisions.
Someone like to move that?
Yeah, so November 18th at 6:45 p.m. Move that we have a public hearing regarding the right to farm law as it pertains to raising chickens.
Second,
Discussion?
would that be 15 minutes before or something like that?
Yeah, I said 6:45. It's fine,
You
right?
did, I didn't hear that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Tom,
Yes.
Heidi,
Yes.
Yes.
Paul, Gary, Matt, sorry,
Yes.
and Gary.
Now, that has already been circulated, but I'll recirculate it tomorrow, just in case you have difficulty finding it.
And paper streets, was there any leftover issues on that? I can't recall.
I think we were waiting maybe on, I don't think there's anything we had to do right now. And the issue is not there right now, right on the property off of Barn Alley.
Right, I let them know that we couldn't sell that because it was public property.
Right.
I think we were at the point where we were going to create a policy, I think, designating what could be done on different streets and then have a list of all the paper streets and have something like that.
Yeah, I remember something about getting an inventory of the remaining paper streets that were not parkland. I think we
And
had
that's
talked.
something that I have and I have not finished. I'll circulate that before the next meeting.
Okay, great.
Alrighty, next, water rates. Followed up with Saratoga County Sewer District on how 36 Covell Ave was classified and asked for their help in determining what the proper rate was. Let me quote from an email I got from them. Our inspector determined that there are 22 rooms, 18 with bathrooms and 4 that share 2 bathrooms. Based on the scale of charges under the criteria of a hotel motel per room, no kitchen, we will be increasing the units from the current 6 to 13. So I informed Mr. Dahlstrom of that. And that's it for now.
And our rates will match the Saratoga County rates, correct? In terms of the, yeah.
Yes.
Do we need to do anything to make it match, or that's sort of automatic in the way the law is?
I think Kim just changes it in the software program.
Okay.
Power, that's power.
Yeah, I just meant the law, the way we do it, we automatically match, so there's no action we have to take as a board at this point.
I'm not sure that's actually written anywhere, but
Well, why doesn't someone move a resolution to have our sewer rates match the recommendations of the county as it changes from time to time?
I'll make
that
that,
sewer and water. We've been.
And water.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Discussion?
Can we just repeat it real quick?
That the units used for water and sewer rent purposes for the village will match those of the county as the county changes them from time to time.
Okay, thank you.
Who moved that?
I did.
Tom.
And second?
And Matt seconded.
Yep. Ready to vote, Tom?
Just a
Oh,
question.
sorry.
Just a question to Tom. If we're voting on this, saying that as the county changes it from time to time, can we supersede or act without the action of the county.
Yes, as long as we have a rational basis and articulate that basis.
I think we should always have a rational basis for it.
Yes.
We cannot zero out a unit that receives services. That would be an unconstitutional gift. But the rates can be monkeyed with as long as we have that reason.
Thank you.
I actually felt much better once I found out that the rates were based on the Saratoga County table.
Gary, what was his reaction, the owner's reaction?
As you'd imagine, you want to put small businesses out of business.
Yeah, I get it. Okay.
Yeah,
He did call me a few days later and asked me how many times a year he's going to get these bills, but he seemed unfazed when I told him twice.
Yeah.
Could I just chime in? Something's going on there right now. He's gone from maybe having 15 to 20 residents to about 5. He has a dumpster out front now. So something's going on. He has very few people staying there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, next, soccer club.
We got a vote.
We didn't vote.
Oh, sorry.
We didn't.
Okay. Tom?
Yes.
Heidi?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Okay.
And the soccer club is going along swimmingly. It's kind of cool seeing the lights up there and seeing little kids having fun there. It's very nice. And they're planning on doing some upgrades, flattening the field out, seeding the field. So that's been good. Next on the agenda is a records management resolution.
Gary, just question. It says on the agenda, soccer club contract. Is there something we have to do? We already did the contract.
That's just left over from last month.
Okay, gotcha.
You want me to read it, Kim?
Yes, please.
Whereas the State Archives revised and consolidated its local government records retention and disposition schedules and issued a single comprehensive retention schedule of all types for all types of local governments on August 1st, 2020, resolved by the Board of Trustees that retention and disposition schedule for New York local government records issued pursuant to Article 57A of the Arts and Cultural Affairs Law and containing legal minimum retention periods for local government records is hereby adopted for use by all officers in legally disposing of valueless records listed herein, and be it further resolved that in accordance with Article 57A, only those records will be disposed of that are described in the retention and disposition schedule for New York local government's record after they have met the minimum retention periods described herein. Furthermore, only those records will be disposed of that do not have sufficient administrative, fiscal, legal, or historical value to merit retention beyond established legal minimum periods.
You muted, Paul.
So
There we go. So moved.
Thank you. This is just they updated their retention schedule. We've already been doing this. This is just a revised document that they told us about during NICOM Fall School. So it's a requirement.
We're required to pass it.
Yeah.
I second it.
Okay.
Good discussion. We kind of said it all. So, Paul?
Tom?
What happens if we didn't pass it?
Let me go.
Get the shredders over here.
I vote yes.
Bring the shredders over. Let's go. All right, Heidi?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
And Gary?
Yes. Village budget update is really just I got from the county treasurer, their projected sales tax revenue had been predicted to drop by 20 to 30% due to COVID. But fortunately, it's only gone down by around 5%. So that's quite good news. And Round Lake is doing actually quite well. And Town of Ballston and the Village of Round Lake are doing the only ones with positive growth. And that's, I think, because of our rapid growth in our assessed value, because that calculates into the formula for distribution. So that's not as bad as had been predicted. Correspondence, Kim? No?
No.
All right. Approval of minutes. Of the September 16th, 2020 minutes.
So move.
Tom, moved.
Yeah. Second?
Second.
Discussion?
All aye?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
Approval of abstract.
I'll move approving the abstract in the amount of $199,393.65.
Second.
Discussion?
All aye?
Yep.
Aye.
Mr. Village Attorney.
Peter brought up before the need for a meeting with the village board regarding encroachments. I think Peter is encountering many people who are saying, why are you picking on me? So-and-so does it. And that kind of, then they accuse him of being, personally against them and so forth. I think that the village needs a policy for how to deal with zoning violations and encroachments for things that are very common throughout the village. For example, if someone has a basketball hoop up and there's a complaint, and yet there are several other basketball hoops in the road around the village, does Peter not enforce it? Does he enforce it against just the one against whom the complaint was made? Does he now have to enforce it against all basketball hoops? That sort of thing. I think he needs the board to give him a policy which will allow him to point to that so that people can't accuse him of being personal in his enforcement. Peter, is that accurate? I think that was a yes.
Yes.
So could we at the next first Wednesday of the month have the board tackle that issue?
I'll put it on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, how would, I'm just having trouble thinking how one would even formulate a policy like that.
Well, let's tackle it. If we can't, we can't, but I think it's worth the effort.
Well,
Is it dealing with encroachments or fair enforcement, or I'm a little confused here.
Yes and yes.
I think it would be helpful if we had some examples of what we're facing. I understand the basketball hoop example, but what else? What are the problems? And I don't need to know now, Peter. But maybe in order to formulate something, we need to know what the problems are, so we can address them.
Okay, one would be people utilizing village property, village land to do whatever, park a car, park a trailer,
Ooh, park a car.
park a trail, basically trailers,
It'd have to be on a
unregistered
warrant.
vehicles. I mean, according to the code, it's where you're not supposed to do it, but if I go around the village, I can find numerous people doing it. There's a lot of people with encroached onto village property. And my feeling is I'm not going to go after one. I have to go after all. There's a lot, and there's a lot of them. So I want to make sure that the board is with me when I say I'm going to go after everybody has encroached or is storing a trailer on village property.
So I think the idea here is not necessarily to go through them now, but where I'd recommend, as Tom, I think, was saying, is that you bring these
Right.
specific things to that meeting in a couple of weeks.
People have made their patios in front of their house or next to their house, taking them right to the street beyond their property line. I'm assuming their property line. They just put pavers in front of their house. Is that allowed? How could I go after one person for doing it and not go after everybody?
I think the issue also is that some people are asking to do it and others are just doing it without saying anything.
Right. Most are just saying most people are just doing it. And the reality is those who asked to do it and did it and said, well, an example would be somebody said, I'll take it down. You're right. I shouldn't have done this. I'll get rid of it. And then they said, no, I changed my mind. I'm leaving it. I'm not going to take this down. I look around the village, I can name 5 or 6 other people who have the same situation. If you're going to go after me, you have to go after everybody.
Well, I didn't mean to have the substantive discussion tonight. I'm asking that the board set some time aside on the first Wednesday of the month to tackle this or begin to tackle this issue so that Peter has the backup from the board that he needs.
I'd be pleased to give it to him as long as we have some supporting examples and what the code says about encroachment. Because we need to know that stuff.
Okay.
Maybe we can send out some documents out in advance. Have a little review.
Yeah.
Okay.
And is that going to be, we're going to have a meeting at the beginning of November and that will be on it?
Do we want to have it the day after Election Day? That's when it
Oh,
would be.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Not really. December?
Yeah, it might be better December. The second Wednesday, I'll be gone. I know that.
It's planning board anyway, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Second Wednesday.
Let's just do the first Wednesday in December.
Does that mean we're not meeting the first Wednesday of November, which is fine by me because I'll be up the whole night before.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll have a hangover one way or the other.
You'll be moving to Canada, right, Paul? I'll be at the border with your trailer.
I'm too old. They wouldn't take me.
You won't know the next.
No, I realize that too. That's why I'll be up all night. Yeah. Either way, it doesn't matter. I think it's going to be a very fascinating night, and I think that people will be watching on either side of the divide.
So we will take this up on the 2nd of December at a workshop, and you'll give us some things to
Homework.
read.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some things
Yeah.
to review.
Yep.
And furthermore, Kim and/or Gary will put out we need to put out a notice that we're not meeting in 2 weeks, right?
How did we
think
do
we
it? Because we didn't meet this month, and we just put
No,
out
we-
the notice
something-
amongst
I sent-
ourselves.
Emailed and
Yeah.
found out that we're meeting today.
But you sent Gary, I think you sent the notice out to everybody in the village when we didn't meet. We have it as an official meeting all the time, and I think we're
Right.
supposed to put a notice out when we don't have one. I think that's the way we set
We
it
can
up.
do that. We can do that.
Yeah.
And that's all from the village attorney.
Alrighty, next from the village mayor, putting together a short-term rental committee. Currently me, Dan Shapiro, Peter, Tom Peterson, are on it to discuss. Board members should have received an email from me with a little explanation of why I think it's important. Tom, Mr. Peterson, did you want to weigh in on it as well?
I just wanted to say that there are a number of cases out there that I have read where municipalities try to regulate short-term rentals after problems have developed, and they're unable to do so because they don't have the appropriate definitions in their code regarding short-term rentals and what to do with them. And the courts say, essentially, since you don't precisely have something that controls short-term rentals, you're not able to control them at all. So I think putting in place at least a structure to do so is good insurance for the future, even if whatever regulations put in place is pretty modest to begin with.
Yeah, as I mentioned in the email I sent out, if I wanted to start a bed and breakfast in my house, I would have to get a permit and provide a plan for off-street parking. If I wanted to do an Airbnb, I wouldn't have to do anything. And for houses with off-street parking, that's not such a big deal, but in the quaint part of the village, there's like, in the middle, there's like 70 houses that don't have off-street parking. We already have one right over here that would never be Airbnb because it doesn't have off-street parking. If we follow the same regulations we did for bed and breakfasts. So that's my feeling on it. So we'll be starting the committee November 3rd. Maybe have a little report for you on the December meeting.
I can certainly understand the parking issue. I have no idea how this would be enforceable. So I'd be.
Well, ultimately it's enforceable because like the bed and breakfast, for example, currently if they have to apply every 2 years for a permit. And if they're not following the rules, you revoke the permit. And then if they're violating, it's like any other violation. When the mill was violating sound ordinances, they got written up and had to pay fines. So you do it basically through the licensing.
You understand how people there's too much noise at the mill or there's too many people at the mill. But when you're saying, where are these cars coming from? I don't know how you're going to identify whose car is from where and which house it goes to when there's already 70 houses without parking in the village. We have a huge parking problem. I agree with you, but I'm just not. I can't envision how this would be.
It's pretty obvious. I mean, I know every car that belongs there, and it's pretty obvious when you got 3 out-of-state cars parked there, you know they're with the house. But that's really only the temporary COVID kind of concern that I had. That will go away eventually. But I've been in touch with Department of Health to find out what the procedures are for, if there are any, for tracking out-of-state people in this situation, staying at an Airbnb or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you're going to track people. We can't track people with COVID. You don't, and when you see a out-of-state license plate, you don't know if that was a rental car, you know, that somebody's car is in the shop and they have a rental car and the plates are protected. You don't have any idea.
How you're going to enforce something, I don't think is a valid reason not to do it.
I think we're jumping the gun here anyway. As Tom said, we need to look at something or we have nothing. And I think we should at least look at it. We can then discuss the issues. We may come up with, we may say, if someone wants to do that, they can have one parking in the village property. We might say that. Or if they have to have more, they're allowed to park down by the baseball field, the second car. I don't know. I'm just saying there's so many ways it can be dealt with. This is premature now.
I sent you 3 or 4 examples of what other villages in New York have done. So take a look at those. There's some good ideas, some irrelevant ideas.
Let us put together a proposal and then evaluate that.
Yeah, and I like the idea what Tom is saying, that we should have definitions and we should have some loose structure. I agree with that. And I'm not here to argue the whole thing. I'm just saying the thing that comes to mind immediately is, how is this enforceable? So if we want to talk about it and create, I think that's the point of a committee and ultimately a workshop. Absolutely.
And by the way, I love Airbnbs. They're always our first travel choice. So it's not like I have anything against short-term rentals.
I don't have anything personally for or against. I'm just saying I don't see how it's enforceable, and I haven't seen that it's a problem in the village. But I hear what Mr. Peterson is saying, that it's better to have to figure it out a little, to work on it ahead of time than to wait till there's a problem. But I don't think for Barcelona either. So I can't imagine it being quite the same issue. Just saying.
All right, village trustees.
Everyone,
Nothing for me.
Paul?
I just had a question for Jessica. Where do we stand on signing checks? You need people to come in tomorrow? I lost track of it.
When I left at 3 today, I still needed signatures. Some of them didn't have any signatures from trustees, and then a lot of them had signatures from Tom Bergen.
So you'd want me to come in tomorrow? What hours is somebody in the
That'd be
office
great.
tomorrow?
I'll be there 9 to 3.
Okay. I might just give a buzz, make sure you're in, and I'll plan to come over in the morning sometime. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other trustees? Heidi, Matt?
Already, public comment? What are you saying, Samantha? Are you saying no? Or
Your audio is off.
your audio is off.
You usually have to unmute me, so that's why I just thought. I agree with Peter about this, Tom and Peter, about this whole law thing. That's why I flipped out about chickens, and there's no reason to flip out about chickens now. People are just get to do what they want sometimes in this village, and it doesn't make any sense. So I agree that Peter and Tom in regards to trying to come up with a solution in regards to helping Peter, basically. I feel bad for the guy. So that's it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You don't need an executive session?
No.
No.
No, okay. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in
Second.
favor?
Okay, folks, good night.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.